be focusing on adding in the actual mid-body housing. And so we're going to be adding in that plastic piece. What I'm also going to actually end up doing is I'm going to end up renaming this so that this is just the shuttle pin itself as this file name. We're going to have all these different parts, but we're actually going to end up constructing this in the same part studio. And so what we can do here is we can go ahead and begin by going into our front plane again, and we can go to sketch. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the use, project, and convert. And I'm going to actually end up using that line right there so that we can end up projecting that line on there. What we're going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and get some dimensions in here. So I've got my dial caliper. I'm going to make sure that it is calibrated and zeroed out. So now that this is zeroed out, I could end up getting this overall dimension here. And so I'm going to get the overall height of this. And I've found this to be 2.675. So 2.675. So we got for our overall height. So I'm going to go ahead and create a line. This line is going to start from the origin here, the center point, or just vertical of that center point. And we're going to go end up typing in 2.675 inches. And now we've got that. This is going to be the very, very top of this. And so what I can do now is that we can end up getting this diameter up at the top here, or that radius. So I'm going to end up taking my dial caliper. We're going to bring this guy down on here, and we're going to end up getting that diameter. So the diameter, what I've got is 1.39 inches. And so that is the diameter, remember? So I'm going to end up creating this. We're going to go out here, 1.39, and I'm going to, 0.139 inches, and I'm going to divide that by 2. So that's going to create that little top cylindrical piece, very, very top there. Okay, now next, what I want to do is I want to end up getting the actual depth of that. And so now I can end up getting the depth here just by using this, right? This is our depth gauge, and then I can push on this, push that down. Now I've got 0.112 inches. So that's going to be the depth of this, 0.112 inches. So 0.112 inches. And press enter. Now, next, what we want to do is we want to end up finding out what this diameter is of this guy. And so that's that second cylindrical piece here. So we've got that zeroed out. I can end up getting this diameter here. So what I end up finding is that it is 0.377. And so I'm going to end up actually creating this vertical line here, and then I'm going to hold off on dimension in that. I'm going to run this dimension from here to here. I'm going to put it in here 0.377. I'm going to divide that by 2. All right. Now, what we also need to know is what is this height here. And so I'm once again going to actually do something different. Instead of dimensioning that line, I'm going to go from this point to the top here. Now, why is that? That is because I'm going to end up, let's see here. So I'm going to end up getting that depth from the top there to the bottom. And so what that is 0.342. So 0.342 inches, 0.342 inches. So we're going to go ahead and put that in there. So now we got that top part fully dimensioned out. What I'm going to do next is I want to find out what the diameter is of this first little part here. So we can go ahead and find that diameter. So we're going to go ahead and just put that right on the edge of this guy. And so now it is 0.525 inches. So I'm going to create a line in here again, 0.525 inches. I'm going to hold off on dimensioning that. So I press escape. I can go in here and go from here to here. We're going to put 0.525. We can divide that by 2. So now we got 0.263 inches. So now that's where we're at. We just got that diameter with there. Now what I'm noticing is that this profile here, it is a diagonal line. And then that diagonal line ends up going to here. Let's get in that point. And then this almost does look like a curved line. So I'm going to find out where this point is that this ends up. So I'm going to go from this point here down to this point right here. And so we can end up finding out what that dimension is as well. So now we're going to find that depth here. So what I'm noticing is that this is about 1.3 exactly. So 1.3 inches exactly. Now that is from the top here to this point right here, 1.3 inches. So I'm going to go ahead and use the point tool. We're going to end up setting this up about right here. And so now I'm going to dimension from here to this top point here, 1.3 inches. So we can go there. Now, what we don't know is how far this is from here to here. Right, and so now we want to end up finding out what is that diameter at that point. And so now I can end up taking my dial caliper, I can get that diameter. And so what I ended up getting here was 0.705 inches for the diameter. So I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to put 0.705. We're going to divide that by 2. And so now we've got that. Now, just as we were saying, this is a diagonal line connecting from here to here. And then what we've got is going to be almost like this curved line is what it looks like right there. So I'm going to end up using the spline tool to connect this point to this point down here. And I'm going to try to create this outline here. And so now what we can end up doing is we can end up matching this point right here. So that point actually ends right there. I'm going to go ahead and use the spline tool here. So I'm going to use spline tool here. We're going to connect this guy. And now we're going to apply an ever so slight curve to that because it does look like it does have a curve to it. So that does look pretty solid to me. So I'm going to end up going with that. Now what I want to end up doing is the following. We're going to end up using the Revolve tool. So I can end up using the Revolve tool here. I can select this revolve axis. And what we want to end up doing is we want to end up creating a new part, right? So that new part, we're going to press the green check mark. I can end up using the appearance panel. I can go in here to the white color. We're going to add that in. And then we want to rename this to be the midbody housing here. Now, one thing to keep in mind is if we end up looking at this, you'll see that it is not hollowed out. We actually have the bottom housing going in there as well. And so what I'm going to end up using is I'm going to set this up so that this threading will actually work if we 3D print this out. We want to end up now actually getting the Boolean tool up. And so I can use the Boolean tool. We want to select the subtract tab here. In terms of the tools, it's going to be the bottom housing. In terms of the target, it's going to be the mid-body housing. We also want to offset. Now, typically for a clearance fit, we would put offset all. Then we would want to establish an offset distance of 0.01. Now, excuse me, be careful with that because 0.01, as you can see, it's actually giving us an issue there, an error. And so what we can end up doing, instead of having that 0.01, we can go 0.0095. If we press enter, that's actually going to end up getting rid of that error. So for whatever reason, it just does not like 0.01. If you end up running into that issue, maybe even 0.0095, try 0.009. And then let me know if you run into any other issues, but that should get rid of it there. Now, one of the other things that we need to do is we also need to go back to Sketch 5. Let me show you this real quick. As you can see, our inner part is actually not hollowed out. We actually have this piece in here too still. So what we're going to do is we're going to click the eyeball, bring back up Sketch 5. We're going to go back into here. And then what I also want to do is bring up my bottom housing piece. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to use the use project convert. And I want to actually end up creating this line. So I'm going to use the extend. And I think that guy's getting covered up. Let's see here. So extend. We want to extend that to about where this material actually starts. So we're going to go about halfway there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create this line going down here. Oops. Let's try that again. This line going down here. I'm going to make sure it's going all the way down there. Nice. And so now what I can end up doing is I can end up using the offset tool. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the offset tool here because I want to actually create this thickness here. So it's going to be 0.04 inches of thickness. And then what we're going to do here is we're going to select all of these other parts so that this way we can ensure that we have a thickness for this mid-body piece of 0.04 inches. So you can see it does something like that. We can press green check mark just by clicking, press enter for 0.04. Additionally, what I want to end up doing is I'm going to ensure that this only continues right here. And so now what I can do is I just drew a line that was horizontal there. I can press M and then I can end up trimming that. So M just brings up the little scissors there, the trim tool. And so now I can press escape. I'm going to press a green check mark. And so now we can go back into Revolve 3. Now let's check this out. Now, as you can see here, we've actually got it where all of those parts are being selected. We actually just want to select this part right here, right? Now, why we are extruding or revolving this extra material here is because we're going to use the Boolean tool that's going to actually remove that material, right? So that this can actually, our bottom housing can actually screw into the mid-body housing there. So we got the green check mark. We have the Boolean tool then afterwards being applied, right? And so now if I end up going into here, we can hide that bottom housing. So now, as you can see, it is indeed hollowed out on the inside there. And then we also have this actual threading too. So that is all looking pretty good there. So we can end up getting a look at just everything that we have so far. I can end up hiding that sketch 5. So this looks a bit cleaner. So everything does seem to look pretty solid. Kind of gauging this with my my actual piece here too. Everything looks good. Next thing that we want to do is we can add in the actual threading up here at the top. So let's do that. Now, you guys all ended up doing this yourselves earlier. I'm going to end up getting a measurement as well here too, so we can check this. And what I ended up getting for those 3 threads that I'm saying, so there's 3 distances threads. I ended up getting 0.11. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go right here. I'm going to select on this guy. And then I'm going to select my thread creator. Now that looks pretty gnarly. What we want to do is change the threading pit. And so I got 0.11, and that's for 3 pitchets. It's just going to simply find the average of those. So I got 0.11 total pitch distance for three threads. And so now that's going to end up performing that calculation for me, the average. Well, we've got that there. So that's looking pretty good so far. Guys, just like we did here for the mid-body housing. So you know how we took the bottom housing, and then we ended up using the Boolean tool and ended up setting up that offset distance. We're actually going to do the same thing whenever it comes to the top carabiner base clip. And this thread, we're going to actually ensure that we use the Boolean and then offset by 0.0095, or if we're able to 0.01 inches, just to make sure that if we were to try to 3D print this out, that we'd actually have that clearance fit in there so that the threads work. So now let's move on to the next step here. What I want to do next is I want to create this actual cutout here. Now, as you guys were looking at this in class, performing that functional analysis, all of these parts, you probably ended up noticing that this was like a rectangle here for this cutout. It's a rectangle, and then it also has like a semicircle on the top and on the bottom. So it's like a rectangle up here. There's a semicircle though, right? And then down here, there's a semicircle as well. We're going to disregard. You probably ended up noticing how there's those like little railings in there too. So the railings on here, we're going to disregard that for right now. We're just going to create that outline of this guy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and go into the front plane. I'm going to end up following this origin up here, and I'm going to create a center point rectangle. I'm going to end up just putting it out a certain distance right here, right? We're going to make some adjustments to this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to find the overall width of that rectangular prism there, or that rectangle, sorry. So the width of that rectangle is 0.23 inches. So I'm going to go ahead and type in 0.23. We're pretty close there with what I created. And then I'm going to find the overall height of this. Now I ended up getting 0.75 for the height of this guy. Now what I also want to do is I want to find out, well, what's this distance from here to here, right? So I can end up using my good old caliper, and I end up finding that that is 0.11 inches. I'm going to type that in, 0.11 inches. And so now we've got that. Now, just as we were saying, this profile here that we're cutting out, it's not just a rectangle, right? We want to add in a circle. And so there's many different ways you could do this. If we use the 3-point circle, we could do that. So I'm just adding this in here. Now, what I need to do is ensure that we have the tangent constraint. So this is geometric constraint here. When you use tangent, I'm going to ensure that this circle is tangent to this line. This circle is also tangent to this line, and then this circle is also tangent to this line. Now, it does look like that's pretty solid. That is the case, so we're going to use trim tool next. I'm going to trim this guy. I'm going to also press L and Q on my keyboard. That's going to allow us to create a construction line. We're going to make sure that that's horizontal here. Well, it's going to basically be a mirror line. So if I mirror, select that as the mirror line, and then I select this semicircle here, you'll see that that is reciprocated on the other side. Now what I could do is I can press the green check mark. I could go to extrude. I'm going to select sketch 6. Now I want to be careful. I don't want to select the actual sketch 6. I'm going to hide this mid-body housing. I want to select that inner part. I want to go to remove. And then if I look at my mid-body housing, we want to select the merge scope to be the mid-body housing itself. So we can end up doing that. And so now I can press the green check mark. So now I want to make sure that there are 4 instances of that, right? Because there's 4 ink switches. So what I want to do is I want to go to circular pattern tool. Instead of a part pattern, we're going to use a feature pattern. The feature that we're going to pattern is extrude 3. The axis of the pattern, if I bring up sketch 5 again, we can actually select that right there. And I'm going to have 4 instances of this. You might end up running into an error. If you do, just click reapply features. That'll help you out. But as I can see here, we actually do not run into that issue. And so now I can press the green check mark. And so now it's looking a bit better here where we actually have those 4 pieces cut out there so that we have where the ink switches can go. So let's go ahead. Let's get another little progress update. You can see we can hide sketch 5 again. So this is how far we are now. And so what I want to do next is I want to actually look at those internal details on this guy. So if you look from here, you can get a pretty good look at those internal details. And then also, if you look at this from the side, you can get a pretty good look at those internal details too. And so that's what we're going to try to add in next. Alrighty, so for this next part, we're going to add in this first internal details. I'm going to go ahead and go into here. I'm going to create a new sketch. So we're going to go to the bottom. Now, what we want to do is we're going to use the use project and convert. We're going to go ahead and select this guy right here, as well as this line right here. What I'm also going to end up doing is I'm going to use the extend tool. So if you click this drop down, you can see the extend tool right here. We're going to extend this. I can hover over this guy right here, and that's going to extend it so it's all the way there. What I can then end up doing is selecting this line right here once again, dragging it to right there using that extend tool. What I also want to end up doing is I want to end up using the use project and convert tool once again. And what we're going to do is we're going to actually select this outer face right there. So now we've got that part created. We're actually going to use the loft tool. And so that's going to connect to this piece right here to another right angle up here. And so that's going to actually create, if you look inside of there, you'll see those 90-degree pieces. And so that's what we're going to be creating in there. So what I can do is I need to create another plane that's going to be right on where that circle is at. So if we actually move over here, we got the tape measure in Onshape. We can end up measuring this out. So if I go from this point here to this point right here, we can see that that is 0.918 in their z-axis. As you can see here, the z-axis is oriented upwards. And so what I can do is I can click the plane tool. I'm going to click on this plane. We're going to go offset. We're going to go offset by 0.918 inches. And so now, as you can see, we actually have this plane rendering right here on this circle. So I can press the green check mark. Now, what I want to do is I want to actually create a sketch that's going to be on plane 2. So I'm going to select that. I'm going to click sketch. Then what I can do is I can use the use project and convert. And then I want to project these lines on there. Okay. Now, what I'm also going to end up doing is I'm going to use the actual offset tool. I'm going to offset this. I'm going to actually go in here just by a little bit. So we're going to go in 0.015 inches about. That's what we're going to do. I'm going to press the green check mark, press enter. And so now what we want to do is we can hide this. And I'm going to actually use the extend tool here. So I'm going to extend this guy to right here. I'm going to also extend this guy to right here so that those end up meeting, those lines meet our actual circle there. What I also noticed is I did forget to extend that guy or project that guy. And so now we can go ahead and press the green check mark. And what we want to do is we want to extend this and these 2 pieces right here. Now, this might end up giving us an issue in our loft tool. We're going to be careful with how we end up doing that. And so as you can see, there is a error that's showing up. It is because there's 2 different sketches in 7. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to press that drop down. We can end up looking at this. I can also go in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that we're adding this. We want to merge this with the Midbody Housing. Now, one of the things I want to make sure, if I end up hiding this Midbody Housing, should be the case where sketch 7, we can also include this guy. So if we do that, whenever we bring back that Midbody Housing, that will ensure that this is actually going through that material, creating that in the entirety of this little piece here. And so you end up looking in here, you can kind of see that profile of, or what that guy actually looks like, what that form looks like there. So that's that. So now what I can do is I want to end up repeating that. So this is radial symmetry, right? So I'm going to use the circular pattern tool. Now the drop down here, we want to select feature pattern. The feature I want to pattern is loft 1. In terms of the, let me select that again. In terms of the axis of pattern, if I go back to sketch 5, that actually has that center line in there. And so I can hide this guy again. For the axis pattern, we want to go right there. We should have 4 different instances. So as you can see, it should end up taking up those spaces. If I bring back in my Midbody Housing, all we've got to do is just click reapply features. And so then that's going to end up reapplying those so that we have all 4 of them. Okay. So that's how you can add in those little 90-degree angle inserts in there.
We have to create those actual rails that are in here. And so as you can see, there's the rails on there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to actually go to the side here. I'm going to create this sketch. And so now what we want to do is we want to ensure that this is actually going to this point in here. So I'm going to go ahead and just use the corner rectangle tool. And so what I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to set this up so that this guy is going to be going to about like right here. And then what I also want to end up ensuring is that it's going down here. So now what I can do is I can put in here for this distance 0.5, and then I can end up putting 0.02 for that thickness of that there. And then now what we want to do is we want to actually extrude this. And so I don't want to extrude it that far. We want to actually only extrude it 0.04 inches. And so as you can see, we actually have that extrusion distance there. And so now what I want to do is I want to ensure that I actually copy this over to this other side as well. So I can end up using the mirror tool here. And so I just put it on that left side there. I'm going to use the mirror tool. And so now since this is on the left side, I want to select the feature mirror. I'm going to go extrude 4. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the mirror plane as being the front plane. I want to reapply those features. And so now you can see that that is being reapplied. What I'm also going to end up doing in here is I'm noticing that there is a chamfer on this. So I'm going to just use the chamfer tool. And then I'm going to actually apply a chamfer of 0.04 inches. And then I'm also going to apply that over here too, 0.04 inches as well. So now you can see that we've got that going in there. And then what we want to end up doing is just using that circular pattern tool once again. Now the entities that we want to pattern is going to be, we can end up going, let's see here, so extrude 4. Let's see here. So entities to pattern, extrude 4, oh, not part pattern, we want feature pattern, my bad. Features to pattern is going to be extrude 4. Let's see if we can actually use all of these. Then the axis of the pattern, if we bring back up, right, we have sketch 5. So that's that center line right there. We can end up selecting that guy. And then what we want to do is we want to ensure that reapplied features, if we end up running into an error, you want to ensure that that is applied. But if I press the green check mark now, you can see that we actually have all of those little slider pieces in there. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. Now, one of the things that I do want to end up mentioning in here, as I'm looking at this, I am noticing that these pieces here on my actual creation, as I'm looking in there, I'm seeing that those juts, right, these 90-degree angles, those are actually not going all the way out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a sketch on here, and we're going to end up using L and Q. So, or actually, we're going to end up using the circular pattern tool for this. I'm going to press L though, and what I'm noticing is these lines, I'm going to use the project and convert. We're going to go right here and then also right here. What I'm noticing though is that there's a line that's just cut in there diagonally. And so what we want to do is use the circular pattern tool. We can select this guy as well as this guy and this guy. We're going to select 4 of these instances that are split among that 360 degrees. I'm going to click over here. And then now what we want to end up doing is we want to go to extrude, and then I'm going to actually go to remove. So I'm going to go remove. We're going to select here, 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 and here. We're going to select, instead of blind, we're going to go up to face. I'm going to go up to this face right here. And so now, as you can see, we actually have it where those parts are also being removed, those little 90-degree angles. So instead, now we have the 45-degree angles on there. And so that is looking pretty good. Last little internal feature that we need to add in here. It's going to be actually on here in that center of this right here. We're going to actually have a little triangular right angle triangle popping out. And so what we could do is we can go into this sketch plane right here. What we could also end up doing is, we could end up creating a section view. So you go section view, you could section that with that previous plane that we created, plane 2. And so if we end up running that section, we can kind of get a better look at this on the inside here, right? And so now I can end up going in here. We're in sketch 11. And what we want is to create on here a little triangle. And so this triangle, we can end up going in here. We can create this. We're going to have this be 0.04. And then this guy's also going to end up going into here. So I can press escape, line. This is also going to be 0.04 inches. 0.04 inches there. And then what we also want is I'm going to create a construction line. So that construction line is going to be going out from here. I'm going to also create a line to right here. It's going to be in line with that. I'm going to dimension this. We're going to dimension here. It should be 45 degrees. I'm going to also make sure that this is a construction line here. So we're going to press construction. We're going to turn that into a construction line there. And then what we want to do is we're going to use the use project and convert. Click this guy right here. And what we're going to do is we're going to actually extrude this guy. So let me go ahead and turn off that section view. We're going to extrude that though, and we want to make sure that it's not going to actually go through to the other side here, but we want to end up extruding this guy right here, and we want to make sure that we extrude that a distance of where basically that's going to end up going. So I'm looking at this, it looks like it's going all the way up to the threading. And so if we end up going into the section view again, we can look at this. Let's see, section view, not currently seeing it. I might have to get out of this extrude option. I'll go back to the section view. I'm going to section this from the right plane, so you can see. And what we want to do is just ensure that that's going up to the threading. And so it looks like this needs to go a little bit past what it's currently doing. So we got extrude 6 here. I'm just going to end up going, let's see if we can go up to face. Looks like this is a face right here. See if that'll allow us to do that. Yeah, perfect. So it does allow us to do that. And so we've actually got that set up. Now what I want to do is that extrude 6, I want to apply that, once again, circular pattern tool. So I'm going to go here, I'm going to go to the feature pattern, and then we're going to use extrude 6. In terms of the axis of the pattern, you'll remember, hopefully by now, sketch 5 has that actual center line that we can end up using. So I'm just going to select that center line from sketch 5. And then now we want to end up doing instant count 4 and reapply the features. So if I press the green check mark, we're seeing this section view of the actual features, right, for this. Now if I end up going in here, I can click this drop down, turn that section view off, and so now you can end up seeing that we've added in that little piece there too. Right. Alrighty, and so that is how we can create the mid-body housing. It looks like we got some great progress so far. In the next video, I'll be showing you how we can create the carabiner top. So I'll be catching you all on that video. As always, if you have any questions, concerns, drop them in the comments. Don't forget, like and subscribe. Catch you all in the next video. Happy Onshape modeling. Bye-bye.